Perfect.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Major Scott Rowett. Thank you for joining us tonight for the Big Red 1 Year Family Guest Speaker Series. Tonight, we're joined by Mr. Mark Fogel, who goes by many titles and has a lot of experience across academia, the military, and several other topics. He can be known as an airman, a pilot, a salesperson, an HR consultant, but I think he's most proud of being a father, husband, and son. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to him for our guest speaker series. Mr. Fogel, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, all right. That's good. That's good. Thank you, Major Roa. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. The team here that was, to say generous and accommodating is an under-exaggeration. The Big Red 1, you're the family. So what a cool mission. And what an important one as well. So I'm Mark Fogel. Nice to be mostly virtually acquainted with you. I'm imagining that there are many tens of thousands of people watching at home, probably overseas. Technically, it's possible the International Space Station, so we shall assume that is the case. Hello, and it's a pleasure to be here. That's me on top of the jet. It's an F-15D model, Delta model. It's a two-seat trainer. I am standing there, and a friend took that picture. We're at Aviano Air Force Base in Italy, and we're coming back from Turkey, get some gas, and we're going to talk a little bit about that trip, that flight, a little bit later on. But yeah, that's me. Call sign Wit, and the reason is because I'm, what's the word? I'm hilarious. So one assumes. The audience, for those of you watching at home, the audience is in rapturous smile of what I'm saying. This is also me. I'm actually literally in that jet. I was lucky to be sort of the photo model, or for jet model for a photo shoot. This is a screenshot out of a magazine, King of the Dogfighter. I'm not the king of the dogfighters. It's the F-15C, what I flew. I don't claim to be the king of the dogfighters. If you want to call me that, I won't stop you. We can assume that I might be the king of the dogfighters. So yeah, it is me. But the F-15C, I'm going to talk a little bit about it. It's the only aircraft in the entire U.S. military that has one sole mission of dogfighting, air-to-air combat. We're the only airplane in the entire U.S. arsenal that only tries to do dogfighting. And so that's why we're the kings and queens of it. Again, it's the airplane, not me. I know that the year of the family, the soldiers, the family members, the spouses, children, the community, I know what it's all about. And I know why you would have a fighter pilot come in and talk. And I thought the best thing I could do for those of you today is to do what any good fighter pilot does very well, and that's just really talk a lot about me. And so I thought we could really go down that path. Oops, here we go. There's two numbers that F-15C pilots care about, 1953 and 104-0. 1953 was the last year an American service member was killed by an enemy air attack, the waning days of the Korean War. And of course, the F-15C community is not the only party responsible for that incredible statistic, but we take great pride in it. And the second number is 104-0. That's our combat record, 104 wins, 0 losses, mainly by the Israelis, but a lot of American pilots as well. Gulf War I and Gulf War II, Iraqi freedom, Saddam, in the early days of the conflict, decided that instead of trying to take off and just get shot down, they would bury their aircraft in the sand or fly them over to Iran. So that's what air power and air superiority does. And it's something that we're very proud of. I'm not going to tell that many flying stories, maybe one, and when I say one, I mean 4 or 5, which is probably going to be about 7 or 8, so thank you for the journey. I hope it's going to be fun. I think it will be. But we're not going to talk too much about the jet. We're going to talk, like I said, about me. So I am married. That's my wife, Amy. She's a critical care nurse, and she now does nonprofit advocacy. Last week, maybe the week before, 2 weeks ago, was in D.C. talking with congressional staffers trying to get legislation passed around breast cancer research. and a lot of credit to what goes on in the world of breast cancer research and funding and clinical trials and experimentation is actually thanks in large part to the United States Army. The DoD's breast cancer research program is an Army-run program, and it is one of the reasons that we've had life-saving drugs for breast cancer. And most soldiers, of course, don't know that. I am also, I think, I think she's a great catch. It's beyond the scope of today. I humbly submit I think I'm a great catch. Consider the evidence. Okay, 1, I'm formally trained in navigation. In aerial combat, but that naturally translates to navigating a minivan on family trips. There's no doubt about it. 2, I can crack an egg with one hand. Minimal shell in the batter. That is also true. 3, I'm a deep romantic. I'm a romantic because our anniversary, our 14th wedding anniversary was 2 days ago, and I got her what anyone would want for the 14th anniversary, which is an HP 1000 series all-in-one printer. And part of me just wonders why we even say chivalry is dead. So that real picture of the actual HP. No endorsement implied, I need to say that. This is also me. So I am a father, as Major Rowett said. I've got 2 twin boys and a little girl, and there she is looking very impressed with flying stories. We'll get her there. And I can say, if nothing else, I don't know a thing about how any family member at Fort Riley feels. I do not know that. I don't know how anyone feels. I know how I feel, I know how my family feels. What I can say is that I do know from firsthand experience that the hardest dang job in the entire world is being a spouse, a child, an elderly parent, a caring, loving family member of someone in the United States military. So I want to say quite genuinely, thank you for what you do. I know that is genuine and true. Back to me. Okay, so that's again me in the cockpit. I'm on active status, but I don't actually fly, and there's a pretty reasonable chance I'll never fly a military jet again. And any pilot will tell you that when they know that is the case, they dream of this day where I'm in my backyard, I'm throwing a ball with my daughter, or I'm tilling the fields, which I live in suburbia, I just have grass. Tilling the fields, 2 black SUVs pull up, an old crusty 4-star gets out of the truck, or the SUV, and he says, and what I'm going to say is a southern accent, "Colonel Witt, we need you, your country needs you. It's time to get back up in there." And I've got a glove in one hand, I'm tilling the field, which is just my grass in the other, and I say, "No, Colonel," and I all of a sudden have a southern accent, I'm not from the South. "No, Colonel, I've hung it up, I've been holding on too tight, and I'm ready to settle down." And we go inside and have a whiskey, and he explains that, you know, without me, the country's in dire shape. So of course I go downstairs and I press the button, the thing opens up that I've got in my secret compartment, and all of my gear is meticulously maintained, and I go, "One more time for God and country," and there I go. And I save the day. But here's the truth, if some SUVs pull up and ask me to save the day, for one, I literally don't remember how to turn the jet on. And 2, I think our geopolitical situation is pretty dire if that happens, so move to Canada. All right. What I am not is a motivational speaker, which, as I say that out loud right now, there are people at home cooking bacon, watching, going, "Oh yeah, he's right, because he's made some missteps already." So I'm not a motivational speaker. Like Major Rowett said, I work in industry, so I work for a very cool defense contractor. We have some civil clients, commercial clients as well, but we do human-machine teaming, AI, cognitive systems engineering, with very cool projects out of DARPA, Air Force Research Lab. I'm dealing with AI experts, software engineers, designers, top people in their field. And I somehow snuck in, so it's really great for me. But I'm not a motivational speaker. I do teach organizational behavior as a member of the faculty of the University of Dayton. I work with other entities around human teaming, human effectiveness, and mainly organizational culture. And part of organizational culture is around building a culture, building a world where the people, the teams, the individuals, the families are thriving, that are teaming, that are they're flourishing. And I kind of say my one bullet, which I'm very proud of, one bullet, is that really what we're going to talk a bit about is hope / getting unstuck. We'll talk about some more things as well. So I know a little bit about you. I said the who are you, and I was going to shout out to the crowd, like stand up if you're, under 20 and all that kind of. I'm not going to do it. Again, we're here to talk about me. But that is a great image I got off the internet about Fort Riley. I know a little bit about Fort Riley, a little bit. Used to have horses back in the day, and I know that because that's my grandfather. Jumping over an obstacle, at the bottom you can see it says Fort Riley, Kansas. And he was stationed here pre-World War II for some brief period of time. My aunt was born here, and he was not in the 1st Infantry Division, but Fort Riley has a little bit of a place in my heart. This is him again. He's 3rd Field Artillery. He's commanding. I don't know what it was about pictures back in the day. Like someone just took the whiteout and just drew. I mean, that's literally what it looks like. I don't know. I'm not an archivist, but that's a family picture. That's my grandfather up there on the right. My dad's dad, and he served in World War II. He saw action in the Philippines. He was part of the Japanese our occupation of Japan under General MacArthur, and he, like many of his generation, never talked about the war. I have virtually no living memory of him. He passed away when I was a young boy. What I do know is that my cousins would tell us that they were never allowed to say the word hate. He was a very cheerful man, but he'd pull them aside and he'd say, "You don't say that word. I've seen hate, and you do not say that." That's about what I know beyond sort of lore and legend. That's my grandma. He came back in 1946 after about 5 years away from his family, and he was a major when he got out of the Army. He had a degree in agricultural science from Iowa State University. Then, as of now, is a great university for agricultural science. It is in the 40s. Again, as of now, a great degree to have to build a successful career as a farmer. And he came back home, and he had everything going for him. He had a loving family, he had a great degree, he had the opportunity to get into a profession that was in demand in the mid-1940s, and he had one big problem though. He had zero interest in being a farmer. But he had 2 more things going for him. Again, the loving family, and the second, I'm going to look it up because I want to say it right because we're all on the edge of our seats. He had Public Law 78-346, otherwise known as the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944. We call it the GI Bill. So he had just saved the world single-handedly, one presumes, from Hitler and Imperial Japan, but didn't want to be a farmer. So he had the GI Bill. And we all know the GI Bill now. It's gone through many iterations, but at the time it was sort of famous for housing veterans. It was less education focused, although that was a part of it. But one big part was to let you get low interest, really favorable terms on a loan. So he took out a loan and started what has become one of the most lucrative businesses in United States history. Actually, it was a donut shop, and it's called the Flake Right Donut Shop in Ames, Iowa. And if you can see it at home, it's 1947. It says, "College grads, but oh, this dough." Great copy. To whoever wrote it, I'm sorry, I'm playing along with you. So this donut shop, the family doesn't know if it ever turned a profit. It was there for maybe a year and a half. My dad was born about a year after this article was written, did not know this ever happened until about a year ago. But think about it. He had everything in the society, the systems, the processes, everything that was pushing him towards a vocation, which was farming, that he did not want to do, but he had the GI Bill, which let him do something else. He was, what I'm calling today, not stuck in that. He did not feel stuck. That's what the GI Bill did for millions of veterans after the Second World War and are still doing today. We're not talking about public policy today, but we're going to talk about the unstuck part. So it's impossible to overstate the impact on our mental health, our wellness, the ability of an organization, team, family members to thrive and flourish when we feel stuck. Personal debt, an abusive partner, an addiction to drugs or alcohol. Those are when you feel quite stuck. And to be clear, those are actually, of course, very challenging, if not dangerous circumstances. No doubt about it. But the feeling, the perception of being stuck in that without a way out, of it being intractable, is what's eating away at someone's mental health. They feel helpless. to be able to change their situation. But it doesn't have to be something that is really challenging and dire and dangerous. It can be stuff that's kind of, well, quite common, that we all deal with from time to time. Anyone you know ever been stuck or felt stuck in a marriage that they didn't want to be in? Anyone you know that felt stuck in a job that to them they were not flourishing, thriving, or enjoying, even though it might have been a great job? Or anyone you know that may have been feeling stuck because of a commitment to the military? By the way, that's a picture of Marines, so I know no one in the Army would feel stuck. But look, it happens to all of us. It happens to all of us. And think about this. It is the feeling, the perception that matters. It's not necessarily the reality. Because what's going on here? Divorce is legal in the United States. The job market is hot. And military commitments are not eternal. But if you feel stuck, your mental health is tanking. There is no doubt about it. This is not also a matter of, it transcends demographics. It transcends categories. I have close friends who are airline pilots, captains, making incredible money with loving families. They're doing a literal dream job. Little kids dream of being airline pilots, but they spent 20, 30 years in military aviation, and they've told me, I feel like I had nothing else I could possibly do. I'm doing this career. It's fine, but they're not thriving. They're not flourishing, and some of them, frankly, are quite depressed. And that's an airline pilot. That is the most, I mean, from a financial security, from a status point of view, it's got everything going for it. Let's think about this. Lawyers, doctors, Wall Street bankers have extremely high disproportionate rates of mental health challenges and depression, often because, despite their circumstances financially, in terms of status, prestige, whatever you want to call it, often they were put in that position and they feel like they have to be in there. And often, and this is what a lot of researchers are talking more and more about, family members would say, you're going to be a lawyer because I was a lawyer, daddy was a lawyer, and grandma was a lawyer, and you're going to be a lawyer. And how many of us know someone who says, almost with a badge of pride, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but quite honestly, I'm a recovering lawyer. Getting out of law, medicine, Wall Street, it's now like the basic plot of half the rom-coms out there. So this isn't about status, prestige, financial security, and so on. It's about feeling stuck. Here we go, Finland. 5 in a row. Finland. This just came out. So what's going on there? You can see Denmark, the Danes are always up there, Iceland, Switzerland, Netherlands, Norway is up there as well. We're doing pretty well, 16. We actually climbed 3 spots. This is the UN Happiness Index, Happiness Survey, I can't remember. Obviously these Nordic countries, always high in livability indices, happiness ratings are very high. Now to be clear, cross-cultural, cross-country comparisons are very challenging to do. You cannot just lift up what Iceland did around teen alcoholism. You cannot just port that to America and call that a success. It will not happen. But understanding why they are, on average, happier than others for year after year is really fascinating. There's a lot of reasons, no doubt about it, but one that researchers are talking more and more about is that they have a very, very strong social safety net. What's that mean? School is very cheap. Childcare is very cheap. You get incredible access to both mental and physical health. Healthcare prevention is invested in. And of course, at this point, what is the difference between physical and mental health? It's just health. And that doesn't just mean that you're happy because, well, I'm getting something free. No. What it means is that you don't feel stuck in your circumstances. That is powerful. And again, it's an indicator of what we're talking about today. Dan Tomasulo is a professor, I want to get this right. He is the academic director and chief of faculty at the Spiritual Mind-Body Institute of Columbia University. I had a chance to listen to him last week. He talks about what is almost the next terrible step of feeling stuck over time is when you become hopeless and what that does for you. So he did this with me. I want to do it with you. Instead of 3, I'm just going to ask you for 1. Think of one door that's closed in your life, whether you closed it willingly, it was closed for you, maybe it's something that's very near and dear or serious, near and dear to your heart or serious, or maybe it's not a big deal, but something that's been closed to you in your life, a door that's closed. Just kind of tuck it away for a moment for now. But think about that. Okay? Professor, he says this, hope, what that is the regulation of perception toward a belief in control of the future. Belief, I added the italics and the bold, but it's the belief in the control of the future. Now I want to pull up this famous picture because, gosh, you're all thinking, oh, that's not there. I had a half glass full, half glass empty image, and all of you are going to be like, at home, again, you're flipping your bacon. Hopefully it's off the griddle. It's going to be burned by now. You're going, oh my gosh, if this guy's just here to say, think of the glass as half full, I'm turning it off. I'm not saying that at all. Not at all. It's not about seeing that. We're actually going to talk a little bit about how to train your brain, how to actually rewire your brain a bit to feel more hope. Talk about a couple quick myths. The big one is that you either have hope or that you don't. In other words, someone goes, they self-identify as, I'm kind of just naturally not that sort of person. That's a fallacy. It is absolutely not true. We all have varying degrees. They shift over time. So every one of us can really become much more hopeful in our lives. Another myth is that hope is simply a purely positive emotion. But actually, hope is the only emotion that's positive that requires negativity. It requires challenge. If you didn't have the challenge, what would you need to be hopeful about? So if you're sitting there going, I'm always seeing challenge, I'm always perceiving struggle, the reality is that's not intractable. That is quite normal. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Okay? Flying story time. I lied about 8 or 9. I'm doing really well. I went a long time without flying story. That's Turkey. Beautiful country. I'm going to talk about that. Turkey. So beautiful. Right there in the middle. Konya, kind of hard to see at home. My squadron, the 493rd Fighter Squadron, deployed out of the United Kingdom for about 4 or 5 weeks, training with the Turks, the Italians, let's see, who else was there? I can't remember. It was a little while ago. I think the Swiss even came in. Really rare. And we got there on day 1. And what happened was the Air Force and the Turks told us, basically on day 1 to the Americans, our squadron, take the keys to your jet, go fly around the airspace, explore it, get familiar with the airspace. In other words, we were told, take off, do whatever you want to do, have fun, and come back. And for any kids watching at home, that is not the way the military works. It's very, very rare. And what I experienced on that flight was just about as close to a spiritual experience as I can. Didn't see anything profound. What I saw was sheer natural beauty. The geography, the natural terrain of Turkey is just unfathomably beautiful. The people, of course, are beautiful. The entire country, rich in history and culture, but gosh, that terrain. And when you're flying at 600 miles an hour, very low to the ground, that's a heck of a good time. Here's some more images of Turkey. Shortly after that flight, after getting back and going, that's sort of why you join the Air Force and fly jets. Obviously you serve in combat, but when you're a kid, you think about just flying and the beauty and the fun of flight. So I felt like a kid. It was just the best thing. A couple days later, taking off, going about 100 knots, 110 miles an hour, and I hear something. And then I feel the jet kind of move a little bit. And I go, I know what that is. It's a blown tire. Okay, I'm going kind of fast, blown tire. But wow, it's like really, I'm like really canted off to the side. And then bam, feel it again, and then I sink back down. I go, 2 blown tires? What are the odds of that? So I elect to abort. Aborting a fighter takeoff is very easy. You reduce the power, and you mash the brakes. It's about as simple as that. And I'm mashing these brakes really, really hard. I mean, my quads are just, I've never pressed harder on brakes in my entire life. Why? Because going that fast is actually really hard to slow down, especially when you're just on a metal rim, because the tire and the rubber has now flown off. It actually blew up so hard, the rubber was embedded in the metal of the airframe. Just they blew. And I'm getting to the end of the runway, and the end of the runway is getting closer and closer and closer, and any pilot will tell you, you do not want to get close to the end of the runway, especially when you're on the ground. So I am panting, my heart rate is 200 beats per minute, and I'm mashing on the brakes, and I'm not gonna stop. But thankfully, the F-15, like many Air Force jets, actually has a hook. And we do have a tail hook. Can't land on a carrier, it's not strong enough, but it'll take a little barrier, a cable, at the end of some runways. It doesn't always work. I'm like, man, the end of the runway's right here, I got the hook down, I'm doing my thing. Luckily, I'm fine, I'm in the cable, the jet's broke. I mean, it's damaged, I didn't do it, I don't think. But I'm sitting there, I'm in the cable, I finally come to a stop, my legs are killing me, I'm shaking, my heart rate is running at 200 beats per minute, I've got cotton mouth, I can hardly talk, and I've got to make a radio call, I've got to tell air traffic, I've got to tell the tower that I'm in the barrier, and more importantly, I've got to tell the people taking off behind me, don't take off, because I'm in the end of the runway. So of course, I'm huffing and puffing. I've got to make a radio call. So I go, yeah, Keeler 2's in the departure into the runway, and when able, please send a truck for me to get back to the squadron. Release the button. I can hardly breathe. Gosh, it was a pretty terrifying moment. And that was not the most terrifying flight of that Turkey trip, which I will not get into, but I was fine. So what I learned from that, if nothing else, was that in any given, say, TDY for me, any flying trip, journey, whatever, there's always going to be incredible beauty. And there's always going to be a chance, if not almost an inevitability of something that's not good, maybe even ugly, maybe even distressing. Everything comes with the good and the bad, but there is always the good. And I mean everything. And I'm not just talking about a flying TDY. Everything. Marriage, great and hard. Having kids, great and hard. Everything. High hope individuals, look for the beauty, the blessings, and the good in everything. Again, it's not just about seeing the glass half full. You know it's going to be there because it is true. You have adapted to understand that that is a reality. The door that you closed, don't shout it out, but you're thinking about that door that was closed for you. You either closed it or it was closed for you. Now, what doors opened because that door closed? We've heard this, right? Like it's on greeting cards. Y'all at home are like, oh my gosh, bacon's now on fire. Like, oh my God, this guy's saying greeting card stuff, and don't click the button. We know when doors close, doors open. We've seen it. It's on posters. But it's actually very powerful in psychological, in researching psychology, understanding individual and group well-being, because you can train yourself to do that. You can actually train yourself to see possibilities. Now I'm going to tell you how you do that. All right, because up to now I'm just basically giving you some greeting card stuff. How do you train your brain? How do you see the possibilities? So that's me, my kids, my spouse. She's wearing a head covering. She does not have any hair in that picture. And I have just taken command of a force support squadron. Force support in the Air Force, probably somewhat like the Army. I mean, it's human resources, it's training, it's non-flying gig. I flew consecutively, nonstop, 14 years in the Air Force, which is like unheard of. Training command, F-15s, training F-15s, a little stint in the MC-12, crewed ISR in Afghanistan, and I loved every second of it. Well, that's a lie. I didn't love every second. It was an adventure. It was thrilling. It was exhilarating. Who was asking me earlier about what it's like to truly fly? It is actually more thrilling and more of an adventure than I thought it would have been, and I had very, very high expectations. It is just an adventure. It's not always fun, but it's exhilarating. Commanding a force support squadron is not exhilarating. It is not thrilling. It is not those synonyms that I would use to describe flying jets. But that assignment, where I was responsible for trying to help my team, listen to them, understand what would help them thrive and flourish, increase their teams and their families' well-being, became the most fulfilling and fantastic experience of my military career. And of course, what did I do going into it? Think, well, we'll see what happens. But no way a fighter pilot's going to say commanding an FSS squadron is going to be the most fulfilling thing that you do, and there was no doubt about it. I'm not saying look on the bright side. I meant for this to disappear on the screen. It's not going to do that. It's not going to disappear on the screen. Again, I'm not a motivational speaker. So just pretend it's not there. It's supposed to fly away with great aplomb, and then the thing underneath is going to slide in, which is train your brain, because we're going to talk a little bit about training your brain. How do you actually do the stuff in your life in terms of behaviors, mindsets, and so on that literally changes the physical wiring of your brain to make you thrive, be more resilient, take care of others better? We're going to talk a couple of tricks. These are evidence-based. This is not just me pontificating. This is evidence-based. I'll prove myself later on. I'll point you some resources. Notice that left brain, right brain stuff. Left brain, right? STEM. It's reason, it's rationality. Right brain, creativity, art. I don't know how many people have not known that that's been totally debunked. Left brainism, right brainism is not real. But how many of us heard that growing up, and we actually have self-assigned, I must be left-brained or I must be right-brained. Therefore, if I'm in a task that is not what I'm inclined to do, biologically I cannot do it. We've been lied to, or I've been misled, and it's just not real. So we've got to pay attention to stuff that we think from the evidence. How do we do it? Gratitude. You reflect on and express genuine gratitude. Reflect on regularly, as a habit, what you are grateful for and express it to others. There's a reason that we all get a little bit, what's the word, disappointed when the gate agent says thank you for your service as they're tying the bag and they don't even look up at you. It just doesn't feel genuine. That backfires. Don't express fake gratitude because you're supposed to for the corporate. So express actual gratitude. And when someone in our society turns to us because we happen to be wearing the uniform out to the gas station, they say, thank you for your service. I imagine it's a challenge. Thank you for what you do. Who among us doesn't just go, you're welcome, thank you. It's genuine. Express it genuinely to others. Express it to yourself, express it to your family member, and also reflect on what you're grateful for. You're rewiring your brain to see more hope, to be more of that high hope individual. Second out of 3, savoring the good. It's an actual picture I took walking in the Cotswolds of England. I lived in the UK for 3 years, lived in a very quaint, cool, small English village called Bottisham. During the Second World War was an American P-51 base. Didn't even know it when I first got there. How cool is that? And every time I would walk in the UK and I saw one of those old British telephone boxes, I just loved it. How cool is that? I'm a sucker for that stuff. But every time I would look for it and I would savor it. So what do you have in your life? Maybe you're on a walk. Maybe you walk through your own home. You see some little object. You see something that's beautiful, good to you. Just savor it in that moment. Again, this is evidence-based. I'm talking about population comparisons in studies. One group is told to go on walks over the course of certain days and certain weeks, and their instructions are, have a walk and enjoy your day. Second group, randomly selected, told to go on a walk and told to look for things that you value or enjoy and reflect on it, to savor it. The 2 groups reported back that the ones that did the savoring, looking for the good and the beautiful, reported higher levels of happiness, and not just the day after they took the test, 6 months, 1 year after doing this. That's incredibly powerful. Doing that over time, you're rewiring your brain. Second one you're doing is focusing on your strengths. We can spend a lot of time on this. Sometimes it gets bad press. Strengths-based leadership, a lot of people in the military have heard of this, maybe you've even done it. There's a lot of good. The ill is thinking it's the end-all, be-all. That's not the case. But when we happen to be as individuals, as human beings, we tend to focus on our own weaknesses. For those of you that go on dates, God bless you, it's been a long time for me, I don't know how you do it. You get dressed, you're about to go out, you look in the mirror, you're probably going to be in the majority and you go, I don't like the way my nose looks today, or whatever that is. For the record, my nose is crooked, I know it, I've gotten there, I'm okay. You need to look in the mirror and go, you don't have to be like, I'm beautiful, I'm the best looking person in the world. Look at something that you enjoy about yourself. What's a strength for you? And it's not just physically, that's probably even the least of it. But what are your actual true strengths as a human being and how you work, interact, and thrive with others? My previous job was leading a leadership development program that specifically took former military members and brought them to the private sector. I've done a lot of interviews, and I would ask, what are some of your strengths? We are all bad, I would say, at really communicating, articulating our strengths, myself included. 90% of the time, it's I'm good at leadership, I'm good at communication, because that's kind of what we think when we're talking about being in the military. Yeah, okay, maybe, but do some of these kinds of tests. Be able to understand what you're truly strong at, and that you can then articulate and focus on. For instance, maybe you're a harmonizer. You do a good job of walking into a group, maybe where there's some unhealthy conflict, you're able to get that unhealthy conflict to a healthy conflict. I hear that, I go, that's amazing, tell me more. More importantly, if you know that about yourself, to steal the old adage, you lean into it. You focus on it. If you're focusing on your strengths rather than your weaknesses, you are going to be rewiring your brain, you're going to be happier over time. That's what our studies are showing us. It's actually more higher impact than the previous 2 I talked about. You're familiar with this one, 5 dimensions. I'll get it wrong, someone's going to yell at me. The 5 dimensions of well-being. This is not just the Army sort of sitting around a smoke-filled room. I know it's not really smoke-filled anymore and going, I'm going to come up with these 5. This is exceptionally well-researched. University of Pennsylvania, UPenn, Ivy League school, has been helping the Army for years in this. It's now been taken over by the Army. And if you spend any time looking at the science, the evidence, the scholarship around thriving, flourishing, and well-being, you're going to recognize that the U.S. Army is a blue ribbon example of resources, techniques, and tactics. Now, if I lost all credibility by basically just telling you you're already doing the right thing, the problem is you're doing a lot of the right stuff, but all of us, myself included, sometimes just find ourselves too busy to do what we think we ought to do for ourselves and our families. Harvard's Institute for Quantitative Social Science, the Human Flourishing Program, they have these dimensions that they highlight. evidence-based, validated, rigorous, looked at over time. I'm not telling you this in addition to the Army's 5 dimensions, nor would I talk to you about Cisco's brand new model of thriving. This isn't even published yet. They have these elements that they think that all of their people, and this is, yeah, Cisco, it's one company, but it's people all over the world. It's huge. And they have a team of 30 researchers who are dedicated to understanding their people and studying them, and they've come up with these models of understanding, flourishing, and thriving. I'm going to share this with you. It's the links to your own thing. Go there and check it out. Harvard's as well. Just Google it. But I'm going to, there's two slides, second to last slide. It's 3 questions I want you to ask yourself on a pretty regular basis, because knowing yourself is always that really requisite first step, but we're all really bad at it. Your first question: is my current situation sustainable? Kind of like, am I stuck? Do I have the support I need? Am I able to advocate for my needs? These are questions, again, that Cisco shared with me last week. Knowing the answer to that is really powerful for you. Now I'm going to ask you to flip it and think about a family member and say, is their current situation sustainable? Do they have the support that they need? Are they able to advocate for their needs? And make the answers to these questions the starting point to a conversation. And no matter what the answer is, go to some websites like that, talk to the people that you've been introduced to here at the 1ID, throughout wherever you're stationed. Because the important thing to remember is, this is the 2022 Army. The people who are leading you don't just say they care about you, they actually care about you and your families. You have to understand and believe that. It is genuinely true. I'm taking $0 from the Army. I'm not saying that as a soldier. I'm not a soldier. It is just true. You have to believe it and internalize that. When I had taken command, again, my last slide, when I took command, I sat down with my airmen, about 100 of us, and I told them something. I said, in some future Wednesday, you wake up and you want to leave and you want to go be an artist in Paris. This is Googling painter in Paris, I think, and I use it. If that day comes, I want to support you in that. And I think to a person, they all believe that I meant it, because I did. When the day comes that you wake up and you want to leave whatever you're doing and go be an artist in Paris, I will support you in that. Are you able to identify and articulate your own desires and needs, get the support that you need to get there? That's what we can do as leaders. That's what we can do as spouses, as family members. And by the way, I didn't just say that when I was commanding the FSS. I say it now at my current business. I say it when I'm working with other entities. At the end of the day, you have to be willing to support your people, even if they're going to say, I'm going to go and do something else. You go, gosh, let me help you in that. Let's make this happen. That's a terrible picture of a donut shop. It reminds me of my grandfather. He did not feel stuck, and he was lucky. There was privilege there. The GI Bill helped a lot of veterans, and not all veterans. Let's just be honest with ourselves. We still have problems today, but there's ways you can get unstuck. If you feel stuck, talk with your partners, talk with your commanders, talk with yourself, understand yourself, and you can get there. I lied, there's actually one more slide. My wife, it's her 6th and final chemo round. She was very successfully treated. I am cognizant and understand every time I ever talk about this that all of us in this room, all of us watching, have loved ones and know people. That's not the story for them. I know that. But I would say that when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, I would have self-rated a 10 out of 10 on the resiliency scale, and boy, that number dropped pretty quick, pretty fast. And it was only until we talked with an oncologist and even just had an introductory conversation around, well, here's the plan, that I felt hope. And that feeling of hope made me feel like we were not stuck in this inevitable and intractable and terrible situation. And what I'm going to ask of you, 2 things. recognize that even if you say that you're a 10 out of 10, which, let's be honest, who among us is 10 out of 10 these days? We've had a rough go at it. No matter your number, we all need to take care of ourselves better. Be an advocate for yourself. And then, when you can, advocate for someone else. Doesn't have to be a family member, fellow soldier, someone working here at the centers on base, doesn't matter. Sort of the old yarn, take care of yourself, and if you can, someone else as well. And the second call to action, other than just knowing yourself, is recognizing that when we're able to have that feeling of hope, that's when we can get more into the space of thriving and flourishing. You all have had a tough little go. My hat's off to every single member watching this and the One ID, because I know that you're being asked to do a lot, and it is hard. It is a genuine challenge, and I know that. So from this old fighter pilot, I guess, I'll just say a tip of the hat to you, and thank you.
Back up, Mark. Sorry. Right on this end.
All right.
Well,
thank you.
What an incredible lesson. I know I took down a couple notes during that. So, Lieutenant Colonel Fogel came all the way here to provide some tools for our family, and I think it really hit tonight and really resonated. So thank you, sir, very much for coming. And on behalf of Major General Myers and Command Sergeant Major Molinax, we have a small item to present to you. It is the Big Red 1. Storming Normandy, and talk about having resilience and the intestinal fortitude that we ask of our soldiers and our families every single day. So thank you for coming out and imparting a little bit of wisdom to our families. We'll continue with our Big Red 1 Year Family Guest Speaker Series in June. Be on the lookout for that. If you have any questions or any looking for any information on the program, you can search Big Red 1 Year of Family. Talk to your chain of command. Your SFRG leaders are always available to support and provide you with some dates of our upcoming events. Once again, from Chaplain Key, myself, and the entire Big Red 1 family team, to the spouses out there that are getting ready to put children to bed as their soldiers are out defending freedom's frontier, personal thank you. So have a great evening. Duty first.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much. This is great.